431 aligns with that principle. There are others here that are way more knowledgeable than me to explain the issues further. I'm happy to take questions, but I understand by no means an expert in this field.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any questions from members of the committee? And so just to clarify, Senator, right now we've got 150.
Correct. Right now it's at 150. So again, the idea behind this bill was to balance. We have ecological issues and we've got economic issues between that we have that are counterproductive to each other right now. And the idea that this bill would help that. We don't want to ban the sport outright and have the economic impact of that. But at the same point, we want to be respectful of the ecological issues that are going on. We think this bill balances those two things very well.
Thank you. All set? Yeah, and just the effective date there. I think we all have it. Maybe you could put out over there on the table. I'm just going to go down the list, and so I have next David Niels from DES. Welcome, David.
Good afternoon, members of the Senate Transportation Committee. My name is David Niels. I'm the Chief Aquatic Biologist at DES and Director of the Jody Connor Limnology Center. As you know, the bill would restrict wake surfing on water bodies that are 50 acres or larger and increases the distance of operation for wake surfing from 150 feet as a minimum to 200 feet. DES doesn't take a position on this bill, but we offer the following comments for the committee to consider, and I would like to take a few minutes provide just an objective view of some of the facts that we know about based on the studies that have been done and the literature that's out there on wake surfing and the potential impact on the environment. I've broken my testimony into a couple different parts, first addressing the 50-acre minimum and then talking about the 200-foot setback. As you know, and was mentioned earlier, New Hampshire maintains a water body catalog of all the lakes in the state of New Hampshire. They range in size from 1 acre to 45,000 acres, so it's a pretty wide range. Most are familiar with the term Great Ponds. Those are for water bodies that are 10 acres or more that are held in the public trust. There are about 800 Great Ponds in the state of New Hampshire. Based on the work that we've done initially for water bodies that are 50 acres or more, there's about 370 of those water bodies where wake surfing would be limited to. If you're like me, envisioning what 50 acres is not always the easiest thing, so I'll give you a quick perspective on that. If you think about a rectangular lake, no lake is perfectly rectangular, but you can kind of think about a rectangular lake that's about 1,000 feet wide. It would have to be approximately 2,200 feet long. That's less than half a mile long in order to be 50 acres. If we apply that idea to the activity of wake surfing, which takes place at about 10 miles an hour, it would take about 2 minutes to travel the entire length of the lake. Or if it was only 500 feet wide, about 5 minutes. So clearly wouldn't take very long to get from one end of the lake to the other when you're wake surfing on a water body that's 50 acres. Point is, it's a relatively small water body, 50 acres. In fact, based on my review of the literature, there's really no basis for establishing a 50-acre minimum. There's nothing out there, to my knowledge. There's only one state, the state of Tennessee, that has a 50-acre minimum that's been passed into law. However, the idea of a 50-acre contiguous area is currently being considered by the state of Vermont as a minimum size of an area where wake surfing could take place. That may be a little confusing on the surface, but the state of Vermont also their proposal includes a setback of 500 feet. If you apply sort of that 50-acre contiguous operation area and the 200-foot setback that's proposed for this bill, that basically means a water body would have to be 75 acres or more in order to accommodate a 50-acre continuous water body or operational area for wake surfing, as well as a 200-foot setback. And I think that's important to point out. The 200-foot setback, primarily based on a couple of publications that have been offered over the past couple of years. One was a 2022 publication that was published in the Journal of Water Resource Protection. Another one that was a report sponsored by the WSIA, which is the Water Sports Industry Association, that was done in 2015. The 2022 publication is basically based on computer simulated models, and in my opinion, provides absolutely no substantive rationale for suggesting a 200-foot setback. There's nothing in there in that publication that documents that a 200-foot setback is reasonable. There's nothing in there that suggests that that makes it equivalent to a boat traveling at a regular cruising speed. Additionally, the publication provides estimate of wave height and energy that do not compare with the field-based studies that have been done to date. So there are quite a few field-based studies out there. And one of them is the example of the 2015 study that was done and included wave measurements at a variety of characteristics of operation of a wake boat. And that study documented wave heights of 25 to 30 inches as a maximum, whereas the computer simulated study only documented maximum wave heights of about 18 inches. So there's quite a bit of discrepancy there.
How many inches was that?
Excuse me?
How many inches was that?
How many?
I didn't hear at the end of your sentence.
Oh,
How many
I'm
inches?
sorry. So the 2022 publication that was done used computer simulated models and documented maximum wave heights of only 18 inches. Whereas the field-based study that was done in 2015 documented wave heights that max out at about 25 to 30 inches. More importantly, the 2015 study, which was sponsored by the WSIA, provided tables and graphs that measured the amount of data, or provided data that measured the amount of wave energy, which is the amount of work that waves do when they arrive at shore. That data indicated that energy from wave surfing waves when they reach shore are much greater than a boat cruising on plane. The data that's presented in that paper clearly showed that at a setback of 210 feet, which is similar to this bill, wake surfing waves were measured to have 3 times the energy of cruising boats operating at boats of the same distance. So I want to just take just a couple minutes to offer a couple other comments. Suggestions on my behalf really come down to, I think what needs to be done is that a common set of references need to be accepted that are useful in setting criteria for these operations of these boats in this sport. I've testified on many bills relative to this sport in the past, including bills in 2019, 2022, and this session as well. Additionally, I participated in the 2020 Wake Boat Commission, authoring the section on wake or shoreline erosion. I've been encouraged over this entire time that generally it's become accepted that wake sports and the waves needed to participate in the sport are bigger than the waves produced by other boats, and that it's important to consider where the sport is conducted with respect to water body size, distance to shore, and water depth. To advance this process, I strongly suggest that a recent publication by the University of Minnesota be considered in part in developing standards for water bodies where wake sports can be practiced. The publication was completed in 2022 and included an extensive independent research review process. Additionally, the study was field-based and measured wave characteristics of several different water body types, boat types, operating across a variety of different operating conditions, distances from shore, and water depths. The study included several quantitative equations that can be used to demonstrate how wave heights and wave energy differ across the conditions. Every water body has different characteristics. There's no doubt about that. I study lakes as part of my profession, and every water body is different. I tell that to everybody all the time. However, this study, in my opinion, represents the best effort to date to quantify the potential impacts that waves from different boats can have on the shoreline. I recognize, and I think everybody in this room recognizes, that wake sports and wake surfing are an important water sport enjoyed by many, many people. They are appropriate in many of our water bodies in the state of New Hampshire, but also present an environmental risk with respect to shoreline erosion, sediment resuspension, and invasive species introduction. To that end, to me, it's important to utilize well-conducted research when considering reasonable and appropriate policies and procedures that are proposed. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee? I have one. I'll let you go over the 3 minutes because you're from DES, but
Thank you.
I do have
Sorry.
I do have one question. Is there a punchline to the Minnesota 22 study that would be useful in terms of our consideration of setbacks?
There certainly is. You can use that study to show what distances that the wave energy reaching shore would be similar to typical cruising watercraft. The study basically shows that to be have a similar wave energy from wake surfing waves, the vessel would need to be 400 to 500 feet to have
Thank
the
you.
same wave energy as a boat cruising at 150 feet from shore.
Okay. Anybody else? Thanks so much.
You
I
bet.
appreciate it. New Hampshire Marine Trades, we've got John Whaley and Peter McCallum. Welcome, gents. The chairs are yours.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is John Wally. I'm the general manager of Silver Sands Marine in Guilford, New Hampshire, and the current president of the New Hampshire Marine Trades Association. I'm joined with Peter McCallum of McCallum's Boathouse in Epsom, New Hampshire, and the past president of the New Hampshire Marine Trades Association. We're here to tell you that we strongly favor Senate Bill 431 and also support the technical amendments brought forth by Senator Lang. Recreational boating in the state of New Hampshire is a great pastime and an economic driver. And according to studies, boating and fishing are our top contributors to our recreational economy. In New Hampshire, recreational boating attributes to $1.4 billion annually and supports nearly 6,000 jobs. And in New Hampshire, during the pandemic, we had our highest number of boat registrations, and we're seeing a decline now due to economic factors and also due to a rainy summer of 2023, where 13 of 17 weekends had we'll call that a rain or a wet experience. New Hampshire relies on summer tourism, and recreational boating is a major contributor. And there are bills in the House right now that seek to fragment our boating laws and weaken our boating activities. Wake surf is a safe sport enjoyed by entire families, from kids to grandparents. And bills currently look to limit public access and create a negative impact on our boating economy, and more importantly, hurt New Hampshire's family-friendly boating activities. Senate Bill 431 is a better approach. Senate Bill 431, as mentioned, is a 200-foot setback specifically for wake surfing. New Hampshire currently has a 150-foot setback on all vessels. This new law would increase the distance from the shoreline, and it's been proven scientifically to show that minimizing the wave activity on the impact of the shoreline. In addition, as mentioned before, we look to prohibit wake surfing on 50 acres or less. Now, mind you, 50 acres sounds small, but at the boat speed, like Mr. Neal said, 2.5 minutes surfing behind a boat is very realistic when you're not holding the rope. People fall quite frequently. So to be up surfing for 2.5 minutes is very challenging because people maneuver and do different things. So it is completely realistic that 50 acres could be surfed on. Senate Bill 431 realized that the best practices and scientific studies are important. And from our time on the New Hampshire Wake Boat Study Commission, we come to the idea that education is important. And with Senator Ward and Mr. Neals, we found that it was important to educate consumers. In doing so, New Hampshire Wake Responsibly campaign started, and through numerous public service radio ads, digital marketing, signage at all boat ramps, Wake Responsibly events, and also to all the marinas get together, and we put educational pamphlets as a reminder each spring during the spring launch to help people boat responsibly, remember your laws, whether it's safe passage, whether it's boating responsibly 200 feet from shore. These things are important. And it's important to remember too that our waterways are held in public trust under the state doctrine. We believe that all boaters, whatever activity they choose, should be able to share the waterways and not be limited to where they go. Senate Bill 431 will improve exposure and the best practices of the Wake Responsibly campaign, and will support the efforts of the already depleted Department of Safety. We are told that this bill is something that they can enforce. You can't enforce water depths. You can't look underwater and see how deep a boat is, but you can gauge 50 extra feet. And we're trying to work with Marine Patrol to ease their burden and allow them to maintain the lakes properly and safely. And they're already depleted down to just 25 officers from where they used to be in years past from 60 to 70. So that's dramatic. That's statewide. That's not just one lake. There are others here today to speak, so I'm going to limit myself quickly, but we look for your support. And as the New Hampshire Marine Trades Association, we look to continue to work with our Wake Responsibly campaign. And now, if Senate Bill 431 will become law, we look forward to working with the Marine Patrol to help promote awareness. And we look for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Were you gonna add something, or?
Could you give me 60 seconds, Senator?
I sure could.
Okay.
There's two of
In
you.
respect for your time. So, no homework, just a review of data and facts from our industry. Not to parrot John and his valuable testimony, but we wanted to make sure that you had some information to leave the hearing with today. So a copy of the amendment to Senate Bill 431, a copy of the data from our industry that speaks to the $1.4 billion economic impact that voting has here in the state, as well as the 105,000+ registrations that we accomplish and execute every day. Of all of the pages that I'll present to you and you'll take home today, this is the one that makes the most impact to me. There are brands in the market today like Nautique and Mastercraft and Malibu and Axis and Supreme and Moomba and Supra. Those boats are traditionally identified as wake sport boats. But I would like you to know from a manufacturing perspective that there are other style boats that offer wake surfing as an activity. So a traditional bow rider that you might see in the water, a pontoon boat, a center console jet boat, a specific used to jet boat, personal watercraft, which is the #1 registered boat in the state now, as well as a deck boat. So there's quite a few types of boats on the waterways now that have the potential to support the activity. A quick history of the legislative activity that we've been involved with over the last 4 years. A copy of the Wake Responsibly card that we put in everybody's boat prior to spring commissioning. A copy of the compliance exam that we give to every new towboat owner as they leave our dealership. And one of our biggest accomplishments through the commission that we all participated on was to have the Wake Responsibly pillared information put on the review that the new registration that goes out to 105,000 registered boat owners. A letter from the Lakes Region Tourism Association, a letter from the USA Water Ski and Wakeboard Association, and then 2 copies of scientific studies that speak directly to the impact of wake surfing on inland bodies of water. Our first one by Cody Fay is peer reviewed, and our second one that David from DES referred to earlier is not.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, I'd be happy to
Any
try and spin
questions
them
from
for you.
the committee? Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Sorry, I was
Hi.
testifying to be late. So recreational boating is clearly an economic driver for the state and both for tourism and our own residents. Do the boaters pay user fees to boat on our waters, and where do those fees go?
I'll shoot to that, Pete.
The answer to your question is yes. A New Hampshire registered boater pays to register their vessel and use in the state waterways beginning each January. That money is bifurcated. A lion's share goes to Marine Patrol to keep the waterways safe. A lot goes to municipalities. For example, my dealership is in Epsom, New Hampshire. We'll process that municipality fee and put it back to Epsom, like a Guilford agent would, a Concord agent would. DES enjoys $9.50 of each registration to put forward into lake quality issues, keeping our lakes clean. And then they have the grant ability to trickle that down to groups like New Hampshire Lakes and different lake associations around the state. And lastly, Fish and Game gets $1 for our search and rescue.
Okay, thank you. And follow up. So to ensure that New Hampshire stays a boater-friendly state, do you do anything educational-wise to keep people informed?
Yes, very much so. I mean, the Wake Responsibly campaign has been a lot of our efforts in the last 4 years, but I think it more importantly, when we sell a boat, we spend like if you buy a car, you typically get how to operate it, but we have to teach you how to drive these boats at the same time as how to operate them properly. So we go through the process of how to use the equipment safely. proper spotting, proper driving, etiquette on the water. And I think it's an important factor too that it gets missed easily is that a wake surf boat can go two different directions, parallel to the shoreline, left or right. It's important that we recognize that in addition to this improved distance from the shoreline, you can also focus your wave away from shore versus towards the shore. And not everyone recognizes that. I think it's a misconception because we always think that the waves have to go to the shoreline to make it possible to surf. Not so much. I mean, if you're on a body of water that's 1,000 feet wide and you're using just that 200-foot setback as the threshold, you realistically have 800 feet to oppose your wave towards the far distance of the shoreline. And I think that's really comes down to the education part of things, is having customers understand how to use their boats to improve the minimal impact on our environment. It doesn't change your experience. It's just, same with noise decibels on radios, whether it's a pontoon boat or it's a wake surf boat or anything, even though jet skis have stereos. I mean, people have to be aware of their surroundings and what they're doing that maybe deter from someone else's experience, and just limit those things and find ways to manage it properly. And I think that's our responsibility as marine dealers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And before I hand the gavel off, I guess I can call the next person up, Andy Lamoureux from New Hampshire Lakes. You want to take over these?
I know, you can keep going,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
You do such a fine job.
Yeah, just wait. Welcome, Andrea.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair. And please do keep me to 3 minutes. I know you're
I
going to
will-
have a
I'll
long
do my- I
day.
haven't done so well so far, but I'll try.
You can start with
Okay, I
me.
want to be courteous.
So good afternoon. I'm Andrea Lamoureux, the president of New Hampshire Lakes. We're a statewide nonprofit organization. Our mission is to restore and preserve the health of our lakes. The health of our lakes is very fragile, and I know you've probably heard that we've been having some alarming water quality degradation in our lakes. So we support about 275 local lake associations, and I know you've heard from many of their members lately in your email expressing some concerns about this bill. I want to say that as an organization, we believe in public access. We absolutely appreciate how boating brings in significant funds to our state. We also have been involved in doing studies that show clean water is also, clean lakes, healthy lakes are also very good to our state economically. We are opposed to this bill because we feel that it does not strike a balance between sustainable recreation and protecting the health of our lakes. We absolutely appreciate the sponsors and co-sponsors of this bill and others in the room that are acknowledging that these larger, more powerful wakes do need an increased setback. And the 50-foot setback is, in our opinion, minimally going to provide additional protection to our lakes and will provide minimal resolution to the other impacts that this activity is causing. I'm an aquatic biologist. I'm also a boater, and I know firsthand that the activity of wake surfing can be very family friendly, inclusive, and fun. And I believe that when conducted in as further away from shore than 250 feet, it can be a perfectly wonderful way to enjoy our lakes. Mr. Niels explained all the studies. We feel that the 200-foot setback is not based in sound science, and we believe that the growing body of studies are showing that a setback of 400 to 1,000 feet can be protective of lake quality. So again, we feel that this bill, the intent to push back, to have a bigger buffer is good, but this falls very short of what is needed to balance recreation and our water quality. So we would urge you not to support this bill. Should the committee be interested in looking at an amendment to provide adequate protection, we would be happy to be involved in that conversation. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you so much. And members of the committee, yeah, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking
You're
my
welcome.
question. what, this is more out of curiosity, because I live in the North Country, so we have Moore Lake, and that's pretty big. So we don't have to worry about the smaller acreage.
Quite big.
But what is the setback now for average motorboat, or what? So
Great question.
150 for wakeboarding, but for motorboat.
Great question, and I'm sorry I wasn't clear early. Presently, there's a 150-foot setback. It's the safe passage law, and that applies to all recreational activities on our lakes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
guess I missed that.
Oh, no worries.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Senator.
Thanks for taking my question. When you mention a larger buffer of 500 or 1,000, I have two questions related to that.
Okay.
Wouldn't that limit some of our lakes so people wouldn't even be able to actually go on there? And wouldn't it cause congestion if everybody's sort of in the same area?
Great questions, and thank you. And I certainly have heard those those concerns expressed. And you would need to do a mapping exercise, of course, but I would imagine that a further setback than 200 feet would make some areas of some lakes not able to support this activity. So I would say that yes, there would be lakes where this activity might not be appropriate because it's too much of a compromise to water quality.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And next person wishing to testify is Steve Raymond from Manchester. Welcome, Steve.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I will try to summarize some of the background information that I have in the written testimony to keep my time as short as possible. For the record, I'm Steve Raymond of Manchester, New Hampshire. I'm here today in support of Senate Bill 431. Senate Bill 431 is a prudent approach that continues to allow families such as ours to enjoy sports we love. It also codifies best practices into law. I'd like to give you my perspective on the issue of wakeboating and water sports based on my unique and relevant personal and professional background. I'm a New Hampshire native, born and raised in Goffstown, New Hampshire. When I was 8 years old, my parents bought a camp on Lake Winnisquam, and I spent my summers on the lake, water skiing, tubing, and that was our family time. And my love of the lake started at a young age, and it continues today. Because of my love of the water, I wanted to pursue a career in environmental engineering. I went to Worcester Polytechnic Institute, got my degree in civil engineering with a concentration in environmental. At WPI, I founded the WPI Water Ski and Wakeboard Club, spent a number of years traveling the country, competing in the collegiate level. During my college years, I also worked at Winnisquam Marine, and there I became very familiar with the many types of boats, people that operate boats, the marine industry as a whole, and the overall lifestyle that people enjoy on the lake. I competed locally and nationally wakeboarding in my younger years. And about 6 years ago, I stopped wakeboarding and I started wake surfing. That was really all I did on the water. It's a great sport. It keeps you very active and healthy. And a lot of people can experience it just because of the nature of the sport. And that's also why the sport has grown so much over the years. My daughter, who's 13 now, began wake surfing and water skiing when she was 5 years old. And she really enjoys her time, with her parents and extended family and friends. We're also avid paddleboarders, and, we love every aspect of our time on the water, whether it's motorized or non-motorized. As I mentioned, I went to college because of my love of the water, ambition to pursue a career that could help improve the environment we all share. This spring, I will have been at the same firm for 25 years and have worked almost exclusively in the environmental remediation industry, which specializes in the cleanup of environmentally impacted surface water, groundwater, soil, and building materials. I'm currently Senior Vice President of Construction Management and responsible for implementation of remediation projects throughout the country, a lot of which involve significant cleanups of water bodies. Many of our projects include restoration of wetlands and shorelines. Because of this, I bring a practical understanding of the water-related issues that can affect restoration and remediation projects. I also understand the water-related issues that impact our shorelines, and from what I've read and heard, seem to be incorrectly attributed to wakeboating. I hear from opponents of wakeboating that they are concerned about damage to the environment as it pertains to shoreline erosion and impacts to private property, and that's the main reason for their opposition. What I would hope the opponents of wakeboarding are learning is that there are a number of other factors that contribute to erosion more than wakeboating could. These factors include development, improper shoreline improvements, vegetation and tree removal, stormwater runoff, ice, wind, and water levels. For example, ice is a factor that many do not think of because they don't understand it or see its impacts. It's out of sight and therefore out of mind. However, during the winter months and the spring, ice can cause significant damage to the shoreline and significant erosion. Due to hard winter freezes, ice forms around the rocks and soil on the shore, and if lake levels fluctuate either upward or downward, it can push the rocks up onto the shore, destabilizing the soil, or it can pull rocks into the water, destabilizing the soil. In addition, during the spring thaw, ice drifts moving due to quick melting or wind can pull rock and soil off the shore, or it can also push rock or soil onto the shore. In addition to ice damage, and in particular relevant over the past year in New Hampshire due to higher than average rainfall, resulting in high water lake levels on many of our lakes and ponds, erosion resulting from high water and wave action from sustained winds has caused significant erosion of shorelines in very short periods of time. This constant battering of waves at a high velocity and frequency, driven by the wind, contributes significantly more impact to the shore than a wave from a boat. For example, a boat wake surfing traveling up and down the lake over a period of time may actually direct waves to a particular spot on the lake for only a small fraction of that period the boat is moving, and only directing waves at that discrete spot on shore when the boat is right in front of that spot. However, during a high wind event, and more impactful, a high wind and high water event, waves are directed at the shore for the entire period the wind is blowing in the direction of the shoreline being impacted. From my professional experience, I can add that when we have projects on the shoreline of a lake, a river, or an ocean, we are rarely concerned about waves from large passing vessels. However, we are always concerned about the impact of wind and high water. As an example of impact of wind and high water, I've included in my testimony a few pictures of recent impacts on a particular area of shoreline on Lake Winnisquam. The sand on the beach in the photos is typically 1 foot over the concrete blocks and extends out 10 feet plus into the water. In just 2 storm events recently on January 9th and 12th, 2024, wave action from the wind and high water removed all the sand over the concrete blocks and exposed the root systems of the adjacent trees. Based on my professional experience and judgment, these natural events described above cause more erosion in one single event or season than years of wave action from a boat in the short boating season in New Hampshire could ever cause to the shoreline. I'm happy to
About
tell
time,
you more or
Steve.
answer
About
questions.
time.
Yep.
About time.
Yep, that's it. Wrapped up.
Any questions from the committee? Helpful testimony. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
And next up, we have Harry Vogel with the Loons. Good to see you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Rishardi and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Harry Vogel. I'm the Senior Biologist and Executive Director of the Loon Preservation Committee. I thank you for the opportunity to voice LPC's opposition to Senate Bill 431, which would set what evidence clearly indicates are inadequate limits on wake surfing on New Hampshire waters. LPC works to restore and maintain a healthy loon population in New Hampshire through monitoring, research, management, and education. With respect to potential impacts to loons, we emphasize the following reasons that we oppose Senate Bill 431. The first is that loon nests can be destroyed by wave action. Loons are adapted to swimming and diving rather than walking. They move with difficulty on land, and therefore they always nest right at the water's edge. Waves from boat wakes can wash over loon nests, causing them to fail in some cases. Nesting is when loons are most vulnerable, and over 40% of New Hampshire loon nests fail for a variety of reasons. Intensive management of nest sites has been needed to continue the hard-won ongoing recovery of loons, which remain a threatened species in the state.
We disagree with the 200-foot standard proposed in Senate Bill 431 because it is not supported by any reputable study. The primary study that recommended that standard, which was funded by the National Marine Manufacturers Association, was based on computer models that the authors themselves stated are not accurate at distances of more than 3 boat lengths and of no value at more than 100 feet from the boat. Their unsubstantiated recommendation for the 200-foot standard is an outlier among other wake surfing studies which recommend minimum protective zones of up to 1,000 feet or more. Wake surfing studies that use actual field measurements cite wave heights and wave energy that are significantly greater than other forms of boating. For example, the water environmental consultants found that wake surfing produced a greater than 7-inch high wave at 500 feet distance and a 499% increase in wave energy compared to a cruising boat. A wave of this height and power would easily swamp many loon nests in New Hampshire, which are typically less than 6 inches above the waterline. A 200-foot no-wake surfing zone represents only a 33% increase in the existing New Hampshire no-wake zone. That historical standard was created over 60 years ago, before anyone was wake surfing on New Hampshire's lakes. Wake boats and wake surfing are by design categorically different than recreational boating that prompted those original no-wake zone regulations. The proposed 200-foot distance is not enough to protect loons from those much higher and more powerful waves. We're also concerned about shoreline erosion and water quality. Loons are visual predators, and they need clean, clear water to catch the fish that they need to eat. The potential for wake surfing to increase shoreline erosion and turbidity of our lakes means a reduced ability of loons and other aquatic species to find nest sites and food. New Hampshire's 150-foot no-wake zone has provided an important buffer to protect our shorelines from erosion. Today, a much more significant buffer is needed to guard against the significantly bigger and more energetic waves created by wake surfing. We support efforts to provide those needed protections for lakes and loons, and we oppose the inadequate standard proposed in Senate Bill 431. Thank you for considering loons and other wildlife in your contemplation of this bill, and thank you for your consideration of any amendments that would protect our loons, other wildlife, shorelines, and water quality in New Hampshire. That is the end of my testimony, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Got the letter too, so. So next up, Eric Orff from Audubon. Eric, good to see you.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Senators. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon and welcome.
My name is Eric Orff. I've been a wildlife biologist here in New Hampshire for over half a century. I'm here today representing New Hampshire Audubon as a volunteer, but I must digress very briefly. As I sat out there in the lobby, it struck me that some years ago, in 1964, when I took hunter safety at the Londonderry Fishing Game Club, I joined the Londonderry Fishing Game Club and I volunteered to come and bring a fellow board member who his name was William Bushy, Bill Bushy. That may ring a bell with some of you, but he's been gone a while. He was in a wheelchair, so he needed somebody to drag him up the stairs of the State House because it was inaccessible at the time. So I would drag him up and we'd go to various hearings. Well, one day we were at a Senate hearing and he coached me to actually do the testimony for him, which I did so. At the end of that hearing, this young senator came back to the back of the room and shook my hand and thanked me and put his arm around me. He said, "Thank you, sir, for your awesome testimony." His name was Warren Rudman. Give you some history. So I will read the testimony prepared on behalf of the New Hampshire Audubon. Thank you for the opportunity to present testimony regarding Senate Bill 431 on behalf of New Hampshire Audubon. We are a statewide conservation organization dedicated to protecting New Hampshire's environment for wildlife and for people. Our interest in wake boat issues stems from both human safety and environmental concerns. We rent canoes, kayaks, and paddleboards from our Paradise Point Nature Center on Newfound Lake and seek to protect the safety of those enjoying non-motorized lake recreation on New Hampshire's waters. Our environmental concerns include shoreline erosion, water quality, deterioration and overwashing of nests of bird species that nest on or near the shoreline, including the common loon, a threatened species in New Hampshire. We strongly support regulations of wake boating on New Hampshire's lakes, including a minimum distance between boats underway for wake surfing and wakeboarding and shorelines, docks, and other vessels. However, the existing evidence indicates that a 200-foot buffer is inadequate to prevent shoreline erosion, protect bank denning and shoreline nesting wildlife from flooding and overwashing. In addition, we believe that depth restrictions is critical to protect the water quality of New Hampshire lakes. New Hampshire has nearly 1,000 natural lakes, and impoundments are among the most cherished natural resources. From the Connecticut lakes in Pittsburgh to Lake Monomac and Ringe, thousands of residents and visitors enjoy swimming, sailing, canoeing, kayaking, fishing, paddleboarding, and water skiing on these inland waters. Without adequate buffers, the large waves generated by wakeboarding can create risks for all these activities. Studies on water bodies in multiple states and provinces have documented various effects of wakeboarding, as described earlier, including shoreline erosion and resuspension of bottom sediments in the water column, which increase the availability of phosphorus and can lead to a proliferation of aquatic vegetation and algae blooms. Wakeboarding not only creates higher waves on the surface of the water, but deeper turbulence below the surface. This turbulence can churn up sediments on the lake bottom, releasing phosphorus and other nutrients, which then encourage algae blooms. The suspended sediments reduce water clarity, affecting aesthetic appeal and interfering with the ability of fish to locate food. Early research on wakeboarding wave effects suggested that a 300-foot buffer between operations and shore provided reasonable protection from shoreline erosion and resuspension of sediments. However, wakeboat design has continued to evolve, generating larger and larger waves. Water environmental consultants compared wave energy from wakeboarding and wake surfing with that from traditional water power boats, and recommended a buffer of 300 feet for wakeboarding and operations and 400 feet for wake surfing. A team of researchers at the University of Minnesota studied the characteristics of the waves from conventional motorboats and wake boats under typical operating conditions in freshwater lakes. They found that waves from state-of-the-art wake boats in 2020, so a recent study, operating under typical wake surfing conditions required more than 500 feet to dissipate the levels equivalent to waves produced by a conventional motorboat. Francis et al. Reviewed available literature on wake effects and aquatic water habitat from Michigan's Department of Natural Resources and Fisheries Division. They recommended that wake surfing and wakeboarding occur at least 500 feet from docks and shorelines and in water at least 15 feet deep. We believe these recommendations are appropriate for applications in New Hampshire. We are aware that Fay et al. Modeling exercise that indicated minimal impacts at 200 feet. However, the modeling methods as described by Mr. Vogel were employed in this study are not appropriate beyond any distance of 100 feet. We anticipate that this committee will receive testimony from numerous representatives of the wakeboarding industry who seek to minimize restrictions on this activity. We ask that you carefully consider the safety of lake users and the stability of shorelines, the water quality of New Hampshire lakes, and the importance of these factors to state tourism in your deliberations. In summary, we strongly recommend increasing the distance from shorelines and in-water structures to 500 feet and including minimum water depth of 15 feet. That concludes my testimony, and
Thank you, Eric. Are there
thank you very
questions
much.
from the
Any
committee?
questions?
Thank you.
Thanks so much, and thanks for your letter.
All righty, thank you.
Very good. So Crystal and Ryan La Liberté, are you here? Crystal and Ryan, are they? Oh, there you are. Okay. Welcome. Come on up.
Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Liberty. I am an 8th grader at Bow Memorial School, and I first started wake surfing on vacation back in 2018 when I was 8. My family and I loved it so much we decided to get a boat. Our whole family has gotten into wake surfing, and we do a lot of surfing on New Hampshire lakes. Boating and wake surfing has been a way for us to spend time together as a family, get off our screens, and do the sport we love. I am here in favor of this bill because I think this will make surfing safer without being pushed into the middle. I am also in favor of this, bill because the restrictions now are 150 feet, and the restrictions for this bill would only be 50 feet more, 50 feet away, 50 more feet away from other boats and docks. It also does not ban us like other bills have tried to. 200 feet would work well on a lot of New Hampshire lakes that I surf on and give everyone enough room to keep everyone safe. I think this bill would be good for everyone that lives on the lake, for surfers like me, and for everyone else who goes out and enjoys the water. I appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you going to add something?
Sure. I was just going to say, as a parent, that anyone with school-aged kids or grandkids knows that the biggest battle these days is getting these kids off of screens. And just like Ryan said, for our family, the easiest, most successful way to do that is our very short summer boating season in New Hampshire, where it's the only time where every single one of us is not on a phone or a tablet, and we're getting sunshine, fresh air, exercise, and talking to each other. And so I feel like this is a really great bill for New Hampshire families.
Well,
That's
thank you
it.
so much. And if you'd like us to have copies of your testimony, you can give it to Sophie, and we'll make copies of it for us if you'd like. But if you don't, that's okay too. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank
can
you.
hand it to Sophie, and thanks for coming. Next wishing to speak is Bree Rossiter from Lake Winnipesaukee Association. Welcome, Bree.
Good afternoon, and thank you very
Hello.
much for allowing me to provide my testimony today. My name is Bree Rossiter. I'm the Conservation Program Manager for the Lake Winnipesaukee Association. The Lake Winnipesaukee Association is the leading nonprofit dedicated to protecting the lake and natural resources through monitoring, education, stewardship, and science-guided approaches for lake management. We work to ensure that Lake Winnipesaukee scenic beauty, wildlife habitat, water quality, and recreational potential continue to provide enjoyment long into the future. We appreciate the opportunity to comment on SB 431 and urge the committee to oppose the bill. The Lake Winnipesaukee Association does not support this bill because we believe that it will be ineffective in minimizing the water quality impacts associated with wakes generated during wake surfing. I want to emphasize that our stance is not at all against wake surfing or any other water-related sports. We appreciate that it can be a fun, friendly, inclusive family activity. However, we know that the wakes generated by wake surfing can cause shoreline erosion, turbidity, and present safety hazards to people and children on the shore. The 2022 study that was previously talked about for the University of Minnesota found that popular wake surf boats require a greater distance from the shore than more typical recreational boats. Wake surf boats in this study require greater distances than 500 feet from the shoreline and other docks, which is a distance of a little less than 1.5 football fields, to decrease their wake size characteristics to similar to non-wake surf boats. The suggested distance from the shoreline for docks for wake surf boats is more than twice the distance of the 200 feet recommended by the Minnesota study. The current safe passage law requires boats to travel at headway speed within 150 feet of shore, and we believe that an increase of 50 feet for a total of 200 feet is insignificant, as shown by the study. To put this in perspective, we've created a map showing distances from the shoreline on Lake Winnipesaukee, and I've printed copies out for members of the committee. There's a QR code in the top right corner of the more detailed map that will bring you to an online version if that's easier. The 150 feet buffer for this map is in yellow, the 200-foot buffer is in pink, and the 500-foot buffer is in blue. You can see that the blue 500-foot setback from shore on Lake Winnipesaukee would not limit the areas in which people can wake surf. There's a lot of lake out there for everyone to enjoy. If you go to the second page, the more detailed map, that's of Winter Harbor on Lake Winnipesaukee, a very popular wake surfing location. The contour depths for that area are also located on the detailed map. As you can see that within the 150 and 200 foot buffer lines, the average depths in these areas range between 0 and 20 feet. From our understanding, water depth has a significant effect on how wakes are generated, how large the wakes will be. And although wake surfing is still possible in shallow waters, the experience is less enjoyable for the participant and the impact on the shoreline is more significant. LWA asks that you vote in opposition to SB 431 to protect and preserve water quality. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks so much. Helpful maps. Any questions? We're good? Thank you. Thanks for coming down today. Next up, we have Gary York. Is Gary here? Thank you. If you could check on him. So we'll go to Jody and Jody Grimbles and Ethan Elliott while we wait for Gary. All right, we'll be with them in a minute. Yeah, we'll be with you in a minute, Gary. We just called them up, okay?
Okay. Thank you. For the record, my name is Jody Grimbalis. I am a representative for both the New Hampshire Marine Trades Association as well as the Water Sports Industry Association. We are here in strong support of Senate Bill 431. I do have Ethan's written testimony. I think I left it at the office, so I will give it to you. It was one of those days. Do you want to take a couple things and then I'll make a couple comments?
Sure. Well, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. As Jody said, my name is Ethan Hellier. I'm the Government Affairs Manager for the Water Sports Industry Association. For those who don't know, WSI is a leading voice in towed water sports. We work to protect waterway access rights as well as to educate those on the water. We have over 450 members nationwide, all the way from manufacturers to dealers. In an effort to not say the same things that have been said over and over again by people that are in favor of this bill, like myself, I will keep my comments short and I will just address some of the other comments that were brought up. There's been comments about the Cotty Phase study, which is the peer-reviewed study that concluded that 200 feet is a sufficient distance to wake surf from shore. In that study, it is a computerized study, but he used field work as well to come to that conclusion that 200 feet is an adequate offset. You know, there was a lot of conversation about how every lake is different. So using a computerized model can kind of take into account different lakes, but also using field data that was done previously are two good methods to get to 200 feet. There was a lot of conversation about the University of Minnesota study. A couple of things I want to point out about that. There was two studies that they've done so far. One of them studied erosion, and one of them studied wave energy. They did not study them together. So on the wind erosion study, they looked at 460 lakes in the state of Minnesota, and they came to the conclusion that wind is the #1 factor into shoreline erosion. And then in a later study, they looked at wave energy coming from boats, compared a traditional runabout boat to a wake boat, but they have not put the two together and looked to see if wake boats cause shoreline erosion. So just some clarity on that as well. And as we talk about depth on a lake, what's complicated about depth, and if you talk to most people in law enforcement, they'll tell you they just can't enforce it, and generally law enforcement doesn't want things on the books that they can't enforce. And another piece that was brought up earlier too is that there's no recreational benefit to be in shallow water, so you're not going to find wake surfers kind of, you know, fighting to find shallow water. The boat is going to perform better in deeper water anyway, so there's no reason for them to be in shallow water. And also just, you know, they have a large investment in this boat and they're not, you know, wanting to scratch up their hulls or bust up their props. So, you know, for many reasons, you're not going to see them in shallow water. But with that, I will conclude my comments and I'll take any questions. I appreciate your time today.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. So I received hundreds and hundreds of emails on this bill. And yes, I did read every single one of them. So the reoccurring theme from people concerned and opposed to this bill that I heard was about the erosion to the shoreline. But the testimony from the marina representatives explained that they can teach the consumer, the boat owner of the boat, to position it where the wave will not hit the shore. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, Madam Chair and members, you can, depending on what side you want to have the wake present on, you can present it on the non-shoreline side, which is, as a boating industry, just, it's something that we would likely recommend or do recommend to any sort of wake surfer and boat user.
Well, could you put that in so that people that are worried about their shore erosion will not have that worry anymore?
Yeah, let's talk about it some more. A couple things I would just note. There are 3 states that have passed 200 foot.
Can you put the microphone?
Sorry.
Thank you.
There are a lot of states that have not done anything in this area, Minnesota being one. So even though we talk about a University of Minnesota study, the state of Minnesota has not passed any restrictions whatsoever in this area. 3 states that we tried to model after were Tennessee, South Carolina, and Georgia. Again, states that probably have longer boating season than we do have here in New Hampshire. When it comes to safe passage laws, they're all over the map in the United States. We have a 100-foot safe passage law just for any vessel. This puts it further for wake surfing. But there are a lot of states that have 100-foot setbacks. Some have 50-foot setbacks. Some have 200-foot setbacks. So we're really kind of looking at what's really right for New Hampshire, and that's why we brought this forward. With regard to loons, I just always get loons have been, according to all the studies that I've read and the articles I've read, our loon population is increasing, but the number one issue for loons continues to be lead fishing sinkers. And so lead fishing sinkers, the various change in weather and climate, as well as the contaminants that now we're seeing that some of our loon population has ingested, has been an issue. I have not seen anything specific to wake surfing. So I'll leave it at that. We'll follow up with some written information as well, and then let you get on with your hearing.
Yeah, well, I'm the chair today.
Yeah.
Okay with you? You all set? All right, good, thank you. You have a question? Go ahead.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe not a question. I guess it's a question. There are other things besides wake from boats that go up to the shoreline. You have a couple of really impressive storms that creates a lot of wakes, and that's going to go right up to the shoreline with the same speed. So I think that we need to think in terms of other things that go to the shoreline, not just boats.
Yeah, and I think you saw this summer with the lake levels that went so high with all the rain that we had, a lot of damage. And certainly I think Senator Waters would note what happened on the seacoast just in these past couple storms with the damage of what the weather can do. So yes, we totally agree that there are definitely a lot of factors. And again, we have a very short season for boating in New Hampshire. It's 2 to 3 months. I'm not sure that that's the number one factor in the erosion issue.
Follow up. And ice damage that gets into the vegetation by the shoreline and expands and dissolves some other stuff. So it's, I think people need to know there's more than boats that hit the shorelines.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I had a couple of questions, Jody and Ethan. So we know that some of the states around us are looking at 500 feet, right?
Vermont is looking to do that, yes.
And based on the emails that we've been getting, I don't think it's quite at the level of the snowmobile legislation it took us 6 years to do. But it seems that there's for whatever reasons, there's a great deal of concern about whether the 200 is enough. Is that fair to say? And if we were to pass the 200, I don't think it's the last we've heard of it.
I'm kind of hoping that if we pass the 200, it is the last that we'd hear of it.
Yeah, well.
That's the whole point of bringing it forward, trying to find the compromise and the balance. I do think we have nothing now. We have 150 feet for everything. We're taking a step forward and saying we recognize using some scientific information and best practices and bringing that forward. So I would ask the other side to think about that and ask them to say, let's, you know, we're incremental in the state. To take away folks' ability to access the waterways is a big step. And so I think that's really what we're looking at here. And so we're trying.
Thank you. And in your discussions, did you look at a differential based on size of lake? So for example, if over X acres, it might be the 500 feet.
We have not looked at anything like that. We took the 50 acres because it was in the Tennessee law.
Yeah.
And that was what we had
Yeah, I'm
modeled
looking at the,
after.
I mean, the 50 acres, you know, we've heard about that.
Yep.
But on the other side of it, I mean, having seen the maps from Winnipesaukee where it seems like it's kind of inconsequential on that lake if you go to 500, but I just thought it might be something that you all could talk amongst the groups about. I just wanted to bring it up.
Madam Chair, members, is something that I want to add to that. In this bill too, you know, having the 200 feet, that's 200 feet on each side. So you would need 400 feet total, you know, when you factor in the entire part, you know, like the entire section of the lake. So any part of the lake that would be less than 400 feet, people would not want to be wake surfing in that general area. So that's a good way to kind of take out, you know, some of these funny shaped lakes that have little legs and bays and stuff like that of, you know, areas that would not, you know, likely be suitable for any sort of.
But would
water
you
sports.
agree that on a big lake, it seems to me almost inconsequential whether it's 500 feet in areas. I mean, inlets are going to be protected regardless, but
I mean, certainly on a big lake, there's just a lot more room.
Yeah. I guess another question is this. You know, I've been trying to get at, and I've talked to a lot of people, we've seen a lot of emails about the issues here, because I do think that, you know, erosion could be with the waterways, the wave height, you know, surely bigger with these boats than other ones, the wave energy, yes. Studies do what they can do. I think there's been we've heard it from Mr. Niels from DES and others, and even from the authors of the earlier study, the 200 feet, problematic. I'm sure people look at the 2022 Minnesota and find some problematic things about the methodology there, and whether we're really even talking about the right thing. We're not going to ban these boats, but you know, I just wonder whether, since the 200 may not be a really supportable number, whether there might be some way to rethink what we come at in this bill, because I think we'd like to get it done, you know, and done in a way that people look at it and say, well, that kind of makes sense for New Hampshire. So I guess what I'm saying, I'm sorry to talk, Madam Chair, is that, you know, maybe do look at, you know, whether to bump the 200 up a little bit, what the consequences would really be for the industry about on which lakes and bodies of water. And then maybe if it seems like it might be helpful, you know, if you pick a size over which 500 really is kind of inconsequential for the boating industry, but might make the lakes people happy. I don't know. I mean, we're gonna have to vote at some point. There's a House bill too. Beats me. But I just, you know, in my coming out of this, I'm thinking, is there some way for all of you to talk? Because I don't know, you know, when there's this much discord, I don't know what we do, really. I'm a sponsor of the bill too, but.
Well, I said I spent 2 weekends reading these emails.
Yeah. So thank you. Any other questions or orations from members of the committee? So now, Gary, thanks for waiting for us for a moment. Gary York. And Gary's the last one who signed up to speak, so if somebody else wants to, I'll give you an opportunity.
Thank you, Madam Chair and other senators. I apologize that I was not privy to the previous conversation. I didn't realize that the seating was limited and I didn't have access to the previous, so I'll try to keep it short, but I wonder how much was said before me about the Minnesota study from 2022.
Quite a bit.
You've heard it all. I'm just going to pass this around. This is the salient points about the conclusion, with my emphasis underlined on the parts that I'd like to stress.
Thank you.
So I sit here in opposition to the bill as it stands. I think there's some considerations that are good: size of lake, depth of lake. I do think the setback or the safe passage is at 200 not enough. In my experience on a larger lake in New Hampshire, typically I find that the passage is more likely 100 feet and sometimes even less. During this past summer where we had the floodwaters, I was being the annoying one by sitting out in a rubber raft in the middle of the channel with my air horn, scolding people going by in these wake boats. The water was 6 inches above my dock. So I think another thing, I don't know if it's been mentioned or not, but I think the increased wave height power generated by these boats is a hazard in some points to people in human-powered watercraft, canoes, paddle boards, and some of these people are inexperienced, maybe children. These waves are tough to navigate in some of these crafts. So that's all I'll say about it. My opposition relates to the setback or safe passage. And I hope this can be ironed out as you've already spoken about. Questions?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Helpful. Thanks so much. And anybody who didn't sign up to speak who'd like to speak? As I said, we're not going to vote on this today. So if you have more to tell us, let us know. And I'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 431. And Madam Chair,
All right, I'll give you a break. How's that?
pass it off to you. Could you hand those to Sophie? Thank you.
I'll wait a second till the.
Yes.
We're getting ready, man. Mid-March, I have to start ramping up. Really? Yeah, we'll start.
Seeing all the construction going by.
Well, they're doing that.
Well, let's get the thing. Yeah, well, it's a different, we'll talk. I think there's a way. We can get there.
Hey, good afternoon again, everyone. We're going to open the public hearing for Senate Bill 427. Welcome, Senator Lang.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Senator Tim Lang. I represent District 2 up in the Lakes region. Before you is Senate Bill 427. I'd say this is like deja vu. I think this is the fourth time this bill in some form or another has been entered. I began this bill when I was a freshman member in the House in trying to develop an alternative driver's education program. As you know or may not know, is that we currently have a monopolistic model for driver's education in the state of New Hampshire. We require that every person, 16 or 17-year-old who wants to get a driver's license must take a commercial driver's education program. When I began this bill in 2017, the average wait time was between 60 and 90 days to get into a class, and the average cost was about $500. We now fast forward 7 years later. The average time to wait for a class is about 8 months to a year, and the average cost between $800 to $1,000. We have huge, the monopoly model that we've established in law is not working for the citizens of New Hampshire at all. I recognize there are safety concerns that we have to address to make sure that we have safe drivers on the road. And what I'd say to this is that remember that we always have a check and balance system. Even under the current system, when a student goes through a commercial driver's ed program, at the end of the day, it's the Department of Safety, the motor vehicle, that decides whether that person gets a driver's license. They have to take a written exam, they have to take an eye exam, and then they got to take a practical exam before they get a driver's license. So what this bill looks to do is try to find an alternative because the current model is not working. The the big parts of this bill start on page, I guess it's page 1. At the bottom of the page in 28, it talks about what the qualifications are under this new program in order to get a driver's education, in order to get a driver's license. The first part doesn't change. It's still the number of hours a parent must teach in order to do now. That's the same as we do now. Parents, when a child gets a driver's license now, they're obligated by the parent, by DMV, that the child is supervised driving with the parent or a guardian. That stays the same. That language comes directly out of the current statute. The second part, B, on the next page of page 2, is a new part. This would allow for an online component for the classroom part of this thing. It also would allow for public schools or private schools to be able to develop course curriculum that they can offer within their schools. And again, this is for the book learning part of driver's education. I've had several school districts say that should this pass, they will develop a classroom that they can offer as a quarter credit class within their public school to satisfy this requirement, work with DMV to make sure that classroom piece works. Section C is again, the eye exam that's in the bill. The last one, the last piece that is attend and complete successfully a driver's training program created under paragraph 3, which is the next paragraph. This is modeled after our current motorcycle driver's education course. As you may or may not be aware, if you don't have a motorcycle endorsement, the state runs an endorsement program for. If you want to get a motorcycle license, you actually go to DMV and you sign up for a class. You go. I took mine up at Whitefield High School in the parking lot and spent a weekend up there taking my motorcycle class. And then when I was done, I took that certificate to motor vehicle and allowed me to get an endorsement on my driver's license for a motorcycle. This is intended to do the same thing, to allow for an enhanced class either offered by motor vehicle or, as the bill says below, it'll allow them to contract it out if that's the way they think is the best economic way of doing it. They could contract out that driver's training program to a private entity as long as it serves the citizens of New Hampshire. You'll notice at the very bottom of the page, I am going to ask for one amendment because when I looked at the fiscal note, I choked. There was no revenue statement in here because there is a revenue stream that's going to happen from this. At the very bottom of page 2, it talks about the director shall determine the largest tuition fee that a private organization may charge, but it shall not exceed $250. That a private organization should be struck and the word that should be put in there. And the idea being that can be a state-run or state-contracted position. It doesn't have to be with a private organization. And that $250 is the maximum fee that the state or the private organization that they contract to would be able to charge for that driver's training program.
I'm sorry, Senator, I didn't get that.
So if you fix that one language, right? So again, on that last line, 36, if you just strike the word a private organization and change it to the word that, so you strike those 3 words and just replace it with the word that. The intention was to allow the director of motor vehicle the discretion to figure out whether a contracted model works best, where they would contract out with somebody who may be willing to come in, but the tuition can't exceed for that class $250. So it sets a cap that they could be paid to, which is greatly less than the $1,000 it's being charged now. If you do the math, in the fiscal note, you'll notice the $6.1 million price ask on here. What they didn't, again, because of that typo of those 3 words, and I meant it to mean that if the DMV could get the money or they can contract it out, with using the same numbers, the 17,000 students, 16, 17-year-olds that they think would take this, the revenue stream is $4.1 million minimum coming in on this program. So there is a net loss right now to the state under the current way it's lined up. That can be adjusted. But I just understand that in the fiscal note, you have no revenue talked about on here, even though there is a revenue stream that's written into the bill to help offset costs. I think at the end, you've got to remember that our goal here is to service our constituents. The current model is not working. Over $800 to $1,000 for a driver's ed program, 8-month wait for parents. It's getting like daycare. As soon as the baby's born, you got to hurry up and sign them up for a driver's ed class. And I don't think that services the citizens of New Hampshire at all. So I'd encourage you to go forward. The one thing I will also say on page 2, at the end of line 30, program delivery may be phased in over a reasonable period of time. Again, the idea is to allow DMV to phase in. They may not offer 100% of the classes right on year one. They may phase it in till we get to the point where we can service all the students that are being requested. But it allows them a phase-in period rather than the $6.1 million all at once. Happy to take questions. I know the motor vehicle is here, and I'm sure they're going to want to speak on the bill along with a lot of other people.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. You know, we're all familiar with death by physical note, aren't we? It happens.
You won't believe how upset I was when I read it.
You know, we're going to have a lot of questions of those other folks, but let me just kind of cut to the chase on this. That if the fiscal note is the issue here, finally, because I don't think we're going to ask that they run a deficit on this program. If we got rid of the $250 cap and let the costs fall the way the costs fall, what do you think?
So again, my goal here is to make it, if you end up with caps like we have right now, $800 to $1,000, there's an economic disadvantage to a lot of families to be able to get their child to be able to get their 16 and 17-year-old to get a driver's license. Part of this goal is the fact that there's no competition in that industry right now. It's complete monopoly. There's no incentive to lower the price because if you want a license, you have to go to them. You don't have a choice. And so if you wanted to, knowing what the $6.1 million expense is, if you wanted to play with that 250 so that understanding there's about $1.5 million worth of loss there and move that number to 350, I'm not going to complain about that, which would probably do away with the deficit. And it would be a neutral. I will also say that, again, under the online classroom component, if they chose to go into that model, there's also a revenue stream there if they choose to execute it themselves versus outsource that.
Thank you.
Senator Gendro had a question, and then
I'm all
Senator
done.
Ward.
I'm all set.
Thank you, Senator Lang. Actually, a couple questions. If, and it's my understanding that the Department of Motor Vehicle or Department of Employment Security now has a scholarship fund for those students that would be able to pay for their driver's ed. Is
So
that
part of
correct?
the 3 times I've brought this bill forward is that the automotive industry came in and created a scholarship fund that's just starting to
Okay.
help. But I don't know anything in detail. And again, probably the best person to ask is Commissioner Marasco, I think is here. John is here.
Okay.
So you might want to talk to him about how that's been implemented and what it looks like. But to my understanding, it's not that widespread yet.
Okay. Follow up?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So you had mentioned about 6 to 8 month waiting, as far as.
8 to 12 months now.
Okay, so a gazillion years ago, I was going for my driver's license too. And
Last week, I'm sure.
That for a horse?
God bless you. And I guess I planned ahead. So I'm wondering if even like at age 15 or 15 and a half, if parents help their students plan ahead for that instead of panicking and saying, my goodness, my birthday is a month away and I want my driver's license. So I wonder if that would help as well to cut down on the bottleneck.
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand your question.
Well, I can envision a lot of teenagers saying, oh my goodness, my birthday's coming up. I want to get my driver's license. I've got to get into driver's ed. So they call and they say, there's an 8 to 12 month waiting time.
So as you know, some parents are really, really good at planning and some parents are not very good at planning. You usually see them at the soccer match. But my envisionment is that, again, this will relieve stress on the industry to shorten those time periods, allowing the state to do it. And a parent still will have the option for a commercial. Nothing stops the commercial industry from working. This is just an alternative to the existing commercial industry, which may relieve pressure on it.
Can I have one more follow-up?
Sure.
So you mentioned too, Senator Lang, that this has failed and you've brought it forward for many years. Could you, because I am very simple, and I'm thinking if it's that good, why hasn't it passed?
So this bill in its form isn't like every time I present the bill, I learn something new. So this time I modeled it after, again, listening to the concerns about safety, I modeled it after the motorcycle education program. And that was the concern that came out of the last time I hear it. It keeps getting, I will tell you this, every time it comes up for a vote, I get closer. I just don't quite get across the finish line. So I gain more and more votes each time because I bettered the bill every single time I brought it in. And I'm hoping this is the final one. So.
Thank you.
Senator Ward?
You mentioned that some schools are now interested in having it. Didn't we used to have driver's education in school? I think my kids went through that.
It used to have it in schools. I think schools moved away to do it, A, due to tightening budgets, and B, due to liability concerns. So I think schools have moved away from doing, especially the driving portion was their concern. There are some that still have relationships with some driving schools. A parent was just telling me today that they went to go get their kid into a classroom and they go, well, we give Laconia High School students preference first. So the little high school has some sort of arrangement with that driving school so that any student comes in and lines up, gets in the front of the line first. So, but yes, it used to be. I took in this kind of model, I took my book class at my high school when I was I went to I was a junior in high school in North Carolina, in Charlotte. And I took my book class at there, but I had to do the driving with my parents and with an instructor. It was just a different model in North Carolina at the time. So yes, this used to be the way it was done. It used to be done in schools. I just don't want to have schools that have to incur liability in the driving side. So if they want to take the classroom piece, they can. And then the student would go to DMV and take the written exam to prove that they learned what the teacher taught them in that quarter credit or semester class.
So follow up?
Yes,
Thank
of
you.
course.
So would it be less expensive if you did it through the school?
I would say absolutely. Again, so taking care of that, again, if you look at the bill on page 2, that item B, that would be much cheaper if the school did it themselves to a parent.
Because I don't remember paying $800 to $1,000 for driving school.
Well, again, I think that's the problem with monopoly, right? There's no incentive for competition. There's only incentive to drive the price up, right? Because they don't have a choice. You're either going to wait. And the interesting part is that I turn 18 years old, I can walk in and get my driver's license without driver's education anyway. So my goal is to encourage better education and to encourage more students to use the alternative program to become better drivers rather than just wait till their 18th birthday and walk in and take the test and take the practical and get a license.
Thank you.
Senator Lang, I have a question. Help me understand something. When you say the education piece, and are you saying to me that you want parents to teach their kids the driver's ed instead of an instructor and then go through this DMV program to get their license? Is that what you're saying? That you want parents to teach their kids?
Well, parents already teach their kids. That's already current law, right? So
Well-
your parents do the vast majority of behind the wheel driving already with their children.
Well, they have to help them with their hours, but let's face it, the older we are as we drive, the more bad habits we pick up. And the instructors provide up to the minute, clarification and laws that I think that us older and longtime drivers have, become lazy about. It's a safety issue for me.
So again, Madam Chair, if you take a look at section 4 on page 2, item D, attend and successfully complete the driver's training program, which is defined by the Department of Motor Vehicle, created under paragraph 3, shall meet the road skills test. So in the end, motor vehicle is always the gatekeeper. So even now under the current system, if I go to a driver's ed program, there is a failure rate. It's not zero. So there is a failure rate for kids who already take driver's education through a commercial program and then go to get their exam with motor vehicle and they go, yeah, no, you need more practice. And they fail students. Right? So just because you went to a commercial driver's education program does not validate that you are safe to drive. It's always motor vehicle that defines whether or not you're safe to drive. And that doesn't change under this model either.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. The chair will now call Michael Doucette.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
My name is Mike Doucette. I'm the president of the New Hampshire Driver Education Teachers Association. My background is I spent 24 years with the state police here in New Hampshire. 19 of those years I taught the driving to troopers and law enforcement around New Hampshire and New England. When I left state service in 2004, I went to work teaching special forces, the top teams, Delta Force, Navy SEALs, Marine Raiders, in different types of techniques that will save their lives. In 2016, I was asked to consider taking on driver education in our area because there weren't many options to our students. And I did that and have my own company called Precision Driving School now. In 2021, I was asked to take over as the primary professor at the White Mountains Community College for the driver education instructor program. I did that and started the program, basically reviving the program because it was pretty fledgling, and we've brought it back. 2022, I was named as the program coordinator for that, and I was able to make many changes to our program. Obviously, I'm in opposition of this bill as president of the Driver Teachers Association, not as my position at the college. Recollection in being in state service for many years, having governors over many terms say that, you know, the state's not in the business of taking over for private industry. And that's what this bill was trying to do. It will decimate the driver education industry because there's not going to be anybody wanting to do it. Why would we put the expense? My small school, I have $120,000 in debt for the cars, so I give the kids good cars to drive in. Yes, the state will be able to get a better price for cars as a state bid. They'll have no insurance really to worry about because they're self-insured. There will be many more costs that I don't think are included. The instructors, it's hard to keep an instructor because we're working nights and weekends. You know, people get tired of that. And so there's a turnover. So in my program at the college, I've tried to change the way it works because as an owner, back in the day when several years ago when I first started, I'd have an instructor hired in April. I'm all excited, get a new instructor. Well, the courses don't start till August back then. And they have the whole summer to think about it and do other things. And, oh, I found something else to do. The day before, I had one the day before and I had one a week out from this course starting. So that person is no longer available to me. The next time I can get somebody into a program would have been the spring. So I wouldn't see that instructor, if I could find one, till the summer of that next year. So it was really very cumbersome to try to get new instructors. And that was when I took over the program at the college, that was one of my big pushes, is try to make this more user-friendly for the owners of the schools to be able to get more instructors, ultimately get more instructors out there, will get more students through, and try to reduce the backlog in the southern part of the state. And it really is just the southern part of the state that has such a backlog. So I did do that. I changed the program. We changed each of the 3 mandatory courses that someone needs before getting testing for a certificate to be 5 weeks each. We run them in succession. I changed it so that those courses run year round. And then we offered to get rid of the prerequisites. So now if a driving school owner hires somebody, it's less than 5 to 6 weeks that they're getting them in the next class. So in 2023, the White Mountains Community College graduation, the driver education instructor program had the most certificate award winners at graduation in any program the college teaches. So we are trying our part to make this backlog go away. So it's we're also in part of the driver education task force that Director Marasco has continued on, and he's made it better because he's brought in more stakeholders to try to make the backlog better and try to take care of other issues. We've gone through a deep dive into the rules, and I'm told that soon Director Marasco will be his final review before he sends them to legal to try to come to the administrative rules committee to change. Because one of the, as you'll see in my notes there, the National Highway Transportation Agency came and did an audit back in 2021. And 2 of the things that they suggested, one was having a learner's permit so that the DMV could see these teens and get them tested, get their tests done before we see them to save us that effort. And then they would be able to take driver ed starting at 15 and 6 months is what the other recommendation was. Instead of trying to jam every teen in that small 3-month window, if we doubled that window, we believe that that would help allow them to get that backlog down. So that's what we're trying to do, is change the process to reduce the backlog. Because that's our goal too. We want that to go. The motorcycle rider training program is being advocated as a model for what this would be. Well, it's not a fair correlation, because the motorcycle rider training program was developed when the DMV required that teens 16 and 17 had to take that rider program before they could get a motorcycle license. There was no business in play before that time. Right now, we've got out of 80 schools in New Hampshire that are in place before this happens. So the motorcycle rider training program came in with no competition. It was just a new mandate. And as a result, yes, there have been a few places that have popped up. But last year, there were 20 16 and 17-year-olds that had to take the motorcycle rider program through the DMV. There was only 20 that came through, not the need that it's being, there's no correlation. We have 17,000 students on average that go through driver education throughout New Hampshire. It's not a good correlation, in my opinion. The other thing that was born from the Driver Education Task Force is the New Hampshire Driver Education Scholarship Fund. It's in its infancy. It's running a pilot program through the generosity of 3 driving schools in New Hampshire right now, have each put 2 students through the scholarship program to try and see where our issues might be, and to have some success stories so that we can go out and fundraise and start asking for businesses and charitable organizations to help us help the teens that can't afford driver education. It's expensive. I know it is. I have $120,000 in debt just for the few cars that I have, as I said. So we hope to have those successes. New Hampshire Auto Dealers Association has been very generous to use their infrastructure to host the fund. So we've got all that part worked out. We know we're going to get it inundated once we do make this a real public notice to everybody. So on the fiscal note, each college class, I mean, when I started the program, I probably had from 6 to 12 students in a class at most. This class that I have right now that just started in January, I have full class of 25 students. And we also cover for Vermont also, they take our courses as well. But I would say the vast majority are New Hampshire students. I don't know what the plan is for the 80 instructors that this bill would ask for, because they would have to filter through that same program unless some other legislation gives them a waiver on it or something, which would obviously work against safety. Who's gonna run the program? I mean, it's gonna make it so that nobody wants to do driver education, and we'll make the DMV program the program, because nobody's gonna, we can't compete with $250 to teach driver education. Our costs are expensive, and I don't expect that this would keep any school involved in the state of New Hampshire. Basically, New Hampshire would drive every business that's doing driver education out of the business, and that's not really what I expect that would be. All those businesses would be out. I represent these businesses, and I vehemently oppose this legislation. I thank you for your time. I welcome questions.
Questions from members of the committee? Senator Gendro?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And referring back to Madam Chair's question about we as older parents develop bad habits, you were a former state trooper.
Yes.
You, I'm sure, saw a lot of, not only as now a driver ed instructor teaching, but also as a state trooper. What is your take on that? Because I agree with Senator
I've seen
Shadegg.
so many, we've all seen bad parents driving. See kids in the cars and the parents weaving in and out. The kids learn from what the parents are doing. They see and they model their parents' behavior, and we have to break those bad habits in driver education. And that's one of the things that we do when we have them in the car. Yes, the parents are still driving a great deal with their teens. They do their 40 hours that is mandated by the GDL program. Graduated Driver's Licensing requires that they do 40 hours, 10 of those hours at nighttime. And it's just reinforcing the things that they learn with us during that time. And we have some kids that show up with 0 hours, which I try to avoid. All in my emails to my incoming students say to parents, get out there in parking lots so that your teen has a little bit of comfort level, so that when I'm teaching them, and it's not saying that's the gas pedal, that's the brake pedal, they have a little bit of comfort level. So we do try to, I agree with you 100% that, trying to, yes, there's going to be some great parents that are very role model type parents, but they aren't the majority. We see it every day.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I do have one question, and
Yes.
forgive me if my assessment is incorrect, but I do believe in the free market. And so if you have different schools with different instructors, isn't that the free market? If if DMV were to run it, wouldn't that be the monopoly?
It would be, absolutely would be. And if the free market, if someone doesn't like the school that has a $900 price tag, there may be one nearby that has a $750 price tag. But it is not cheap to run a program. I mean, yes, look at our grocery bills. Our grocery bills have doubled. And, driver ed hasn't doubled in price. It's in my time, it's gone up, but it has not gone anywhere near what some of the other commodities we deal with every day have been.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, thank you for your
time.
testimony. The chair will now call Scott Rogers. Good
Thank you, Madam
afternoon.
Chair. Good afternoon. So my name is Scott Rogers. I'm the owner operator of Thin Blue Line Driving School. Currently, we have 5 locations in the state. Just a little background on myself, like Mike gave a little background on himself. I was a police officer for 30 years, 23 and a half years full-time. And then I stayed on part-time for 6 years, and I retired in 2018. I finally gave it all up. After injuries, I just didn't feel I could do the job effectively. So I started my driver education journey in 2016. I went to classes at Keene State, got my certification in 1 year. So I got my provisional, then I finished out my standard certification courses. And so I had everything done very quickly. I did my apprenticeship with 2 different driving schools, and then I had the opportunity in 2018 to open up my own, and it was always my goal. Being a former police officer, I felt, and I had some people online that were going to be coming to work for me as police officers, I thought we'd be a great role model to teens. It was a good match. And so I opened up the doors April 7th, 2018 in Windham and in Hampstead. At the end of that year, I opened up a 3rd location in Londonderry, which was a very good decision. And then I closed Hampstead in April of 2019. The demographics just weren't there, and I felt kids could come to Windham if they needed to. So I've been in business almost 6 complete years now. And I started the program at $695. I tried to come in being reasonable at the time. I looked at what all the other driving schools were doing, and I felt $695 was a good place to be. So since then, just to give you an idea, just about 6 years now, I've only gone up to $900. So $205 in 6 years. So with my fleet, I have 15 cars in my fleet. We have 4 Jeeps, 10 Subarus, and 1 Toyota Camry. I've got 7 of my vehicles paid off. I'm paying on 8 right now. I just did the numbers this morning. I have $300,000 in automobile loans right now. My insurance is upwards to $40,000 a year. I have no problem saying this in an open forum. I start my instructors at $30 an hour. So right off the bat, once they do 10 hours with a teen, they're taking $300 right off the $900. So I'm down to $600, right, to run operational expenses. Just to give you an idea. So I pay my instructors very well. Why? I feel if you don't pay people well, they're not going to stay. They're not going to stay loyal. And it's been tough. I'll be honest, I've lost 6 people in the 6 years, 6 or 7 people. And that's tough. Retention is tough. It's just like in police work. It's tough to find police officers. Departments are experiencing that right now. So, but I've had people come in to fill in, I count my blessings. I've had people being able to fall right into place and pick up the slack. So currently Thin Blue Line, like I said, has 5 locations. We're in Windham, Londonderry. I expanded to Meredith starting October 5th of 2023. Then October 29th, I opened up inside of New Hampton Prep School because there's been a tough challenge for the prep schools or the private schools to have driver education or have the teens leave the campus to go to driver education. So I had somebody call me and ask me, and I have a former state trooper in place running the program in New Hampton. My daughter runs Meredith along with another employee. And then I just opened up in Prospect Mountain over in Alton because the previous driving school had left and they didn't have anybody there for almost a year to almost 2 years. We walked right in. I have another law enforcement officer who's working that location. That program's in its first class right now. And so we're doing our part at Thin Blue Line to try to, so right now we're putting through about 130 to 140 kids every 6 weeks. So I think Thin Blue Lines, we're trying to do our best to help with this number to reduce the teens waiting. So at the end of the year, we're going to be close to somewhere between 12 to 1,500 teens that we're putting through our program. So we're trying to be a positive impact to the industry. As far as the cost, so when we talk about 900, I heard Senator Lang. I respect his opinion. Obviously, I'm opposed to this bill. And so I broke it down even for Director Marasco in a monthly meeting. And I said, Director, $900, we have the teens for 46 hours. So we have them for 30 hours in the classroom, 10 hours behind the wheel, one-on-one with an instructor, and then they have to do 6 hours of observation. So that's a total of 46 hours that they're getting education with us. You break that down, it's $19.56 an hour. Where are you going to get that type of training from a certified instructor for $19.56? So I just want to break it down that way. So yes, 900 does, like Mike said, 900 does sound like a lot, but I've only gone up $205 in 6 years. I've tried to be fair, but I'm also running a business and there's a lot of expenses, a lot. And thank God, I have my son who's a certified instructor. He's also the team mechanic and keeps the fleet going. So I'm saving money there, but most other schools are paying that, not only parts, but labor for vehicles. I mean, we're going through tires. I mean, tires are not cheap. Tires are almost $800 to $1,000 for the Subarus. And then the Jeeps are almost $1,500 for a set of tires. So there's a lot of cost to this. And just so that you folks understand, Trooper DuPont might touch on this, but the programs are either 5 or 6 weeks. So if it's 17 or less students, it's a 5-week program. If it's 18 to 30 students, you have to run a 6-week program. And we usually try to run a week or two in between so that we can get all the teens finished up with their drive times. I'm just going to say this, and I said it to Mike at lunch before. It's not the front line stuff that I see as a challenge. Yeah, there are some challenges, but it's the back office of running this business. I'm being honest with you. If I did not have my secretary, Sue, and my daughter and Olivia running, I have 3 people behind the scenes keeping 5 locations up to par with paperwork, answering emails. It's not that easy. When a student signs up, a parent registers, just so you understand, it takes about 10 minutes to complete that file. You got to create a drive sheet, green card, a sample of the green card, and just get that folder ready, name tag. So there's a lot of work that goes on. And Sue has streamlined things in 6 years. She has done an amazing job trying to make this as seamless as possible on the back office end. But I'm just letting you know there is a lot of work behind the scenes that I don't think Senator Lang realizes. I really do. There's a lot. And so, and I say this to people, if I didn't have Sue, I'd probably be out of business because you got to deal with the state, you got to deal with federal, all those different elements, as long as, and also dealing with, Trooper DuPont's office with driver education through the Department of Safety. So, with the Division of Motor Vehicles. So, any questions?
No, thank you very much.
Appreciate your time. Thanks.
The chair will call Director Marasco. Good afternoon. So nice to see you.
Members of the committee, John Marasco, Director at your DMV. As Scott Rogers just stated, Trooper First Class Rick DuPont, he does, through the state police, oversee the driver education program on behalf of the DMV. But I will speak at a 30,000-foot view on this bill and some of the things we are working on. I just want to start off by saying that, for Mike Doucette and for Scott Rogers, we meet with them every month at our driver's ed meeting at the DMV, as well as with other schools, other stakeholders, Dan Goodman from AAA. And I can tell you that in my position at the DMV, I've been there for just about 2 years now, and we've been having these meetings for the 2-year time frame. And these are really in-depth, comprehensive meetings with now notes at the end that are given out to everybody. We cover a lot of ground. We're working really hard collaboratively to figure out what can we do to reduce wait times, what can we do to reduce the cost, and to make it more seamless for the instructors, make it more seamless for the parents, the students, and to make sure we're doing our part at the DMV. So I just want to let you know that over the last 2 years, driver's ed has been a main focus of the agency and working with the industry. And I just want to say for Mike and Scott, they're the lifeblood of, the driver's ed industry and allowing young people, 16 and 17-year-olds, to fulfill their statutory obligation to be able to come to the DMV prior to 18 to test to get a driver's license. If not for the industry, we wouldn't have those opportunities. So I'm grateful for what they do. They do a wonderful job. I know they work hard, and I think Scott just eloquently explained the cost structure and the fees and what it goes into to take to run a school. One other takeaway that I have from this hearing is that with this bill and with the testimony, it appears everybody here is on the same page that having some level of official training is the way to go for 16 and 17-year-olds to make sure that by the time they get behind the wheel of that missile, that they're in the best possible mindset to be successful every time they do that. So it's really nice to see that we all agree. It appears that having driver's education, whether it's at the DMV, which is what this bill is asking for, or it's through the industry, or both, is the way to go. So I just want to say I'm very pleased for that. Some of the things that Mike Doucette mentioned, we are working on different ways to address cost. And one of them, I want to thank Dan Bennett, president of New Hampshire Automobile Dealers Association. He's been a driving force behind the New Hampshire Driver's Education Scholarship Fund, which we just had a meeting on yesterday. Small committee, we're really close. We're really close now to being able to flip the switch on that, market it, bring in donations. And to Mike Doucette's point, I think we all feel that this is going to be a winner, and we're going to see people that want to donate, and we're going to see young people that are going to want to fill out the application and receive money for driver's ed. It's an issue. I hear from employees at the Manchester DMV in particular, there are a lot of people that go in and go to the counter, and they do not know how their young person is going to be able to get through driver's ed, how they're going to afford it. It's a real issue. This scholarship fund actually started with a young man who sent a letter to me when I first started this job. And in that letter, he wrote, as a junior at Goffstown High School, how am I going to afford driver's ed? I don't have the money for that. I don't have $900. So we brought him in to a driver's ed monthly meeting. He read his letter aloud, and he was given a scholarship to attend driver's ed, and he got his driver's license. And that was fantastic, and that was thanks to the industry. But we wanted to do more for other young people that are in the same situation. So there's a real need. That scholarship fund is going to kick off, and it's not that far away. I'm talking, I think probably within the next 60 days or well before that, we're going to be live with it. So working with Dan and his team on that. Wait times. Trooper DuPont, we have asked to start tracking wait times around the state. I just spoke with the trooper. He says on average, we're looking at about 4 to 6 months. That's still a long time. But the industry is working hard to reduce that. But we're always going to try to find innovative ways to knock that number down. Mike spoke to pending rules. We have worked with the driver's ed community, and there are some rule changes that are going to go to OLS and jail car. They're going to make it a little bit more seamless to bring driver ed instructors on and keep them on the road longer. The other thing we're working on with employment security is a program to reduce the cost to become a driver's ed instructor through White Mountains Community College, where Mike runs the program, by 50%. And I'm hopeful that we're going to get to that very soon. Marketing, we've been working with the industry on marketing. So Mike made actually John Cameron, who was the prior president of the New Hampshire Driver Ed Teachers Association, made a video, and we offered it. We said, use the DMV platform. Let's get videos out. Let's bring in more people that want to be driver ed instructors. That will knock down the wait time and get more young people on the road. The other thing that we did most recently, Deputy Director Janet Bouchard is here, and she sat in. We asked for the Nashua School District to come in and talk about their program. I happen to be driving behind Nashua South High School, and I saw that they had some cars back there that said driver's ed. And I didn't realize there were any schools that were associated with driver's ed anymore. And so they came in and gave a presentation. They run a robust program. Apparently there's 5 to 6 other schools in the state districts that do the same. we want to learn more about that, and we want to see if we can expand that geographically, cut cost. It allows the industry to help partner with the schools and still make sure that they have their part of the business. So we're exploring that, and going to work with Department of Ed to see what we can do to expand those options. As I finish up here, online. So in this bill here, it does talk about an online component. There is a law and rule that allows for the Commissioner of Safety that he may allow for online training. I've sent the letter out to the driver's ed school many months ago. Policy decision at this point above me is that there will be no online. So it's the 30 hours brick and mortar in the classroom at this time. So if this bill were to pass, that would be a consideration there. I do know when we look at the fiscal note, it's large. We did the best we could to go through and look at what would it take to staff this if you had, in a good year, all 17,000 young people that wanted to come to the DMV to take part in this program. What would that cost? How many would we need? How many vehicles? So we tried to calculate all of that out. To Senator Lang's point, he's absolutely right. We did not put the revenue portion in the fiscal note, and we should have for the $250 that you would recoup there. So thank you for that, Senator. That's a very good point. So with that, we would need initial funding to start a program like this, to hire the number of people that we would need to roll this program out, both the classroom portion, whether it's online and using a Moodle platform, a online training platform, or the in-person. We would need money for potential leases to have a brick and mortar location around the state to actually do that portion of the classroom. And then we would need instructors that could go out in vehicles and actually perform what driver ed schools do now and train young people to drive before they're tested through the DMV. There's a lot of money involved with that, but I will say this, that if the money was allocated, both initially and ongoing, and you asked the DMV to create a program, we would create a program, and we would train and hire individuals to make that program happen. So I think there's room here for everyone. I think there's room for the industry. I think there could be room for the DMV. I know in the bill it says a phased approach. Maybe it's a small number that come to the DMV. Maybe if the wait times at certain times get up too high, maybe the DMV can serve as a low-cost relief valve. Maybe it's not for all 17,000. We don't want to take away from the industry, but maybe it's in partnership with the industry that there are some opportunities, like the motorcycle rider training program. We do 2,000 a year through that. You know, maybe you cap it. Maybe you do a small number. That means the fiscal note doesn't have to be as big. We don't have to hire as many. We don't have to buy as many cars. We don't have to have as much insurance. But maybe there's a little bit of a relief valve that we can partner with industry on. And I will leave you with this. You do have to take driver's ed to come to the DMV to test if you're 16 or 17 years old. But the state doesn't have a role in helping you get there whatsoever. And so we're thankful for the industry. I always worry about, what if we didn't have as many people in the industry? What if the wait times got worse? What if the cost really went up because you didn't have great professionals like Mike and Scott to try to keep costs down? You got to fulfill the statute. How do they get there? It might make sense to have the state have a role in allowing young people to be able to fulfill the statute at a low cost to be able to come in and test the DMV when they're 16 and 17. But it doesn't have to be all of it. It could be overflow or a small part or a phased approach. So that's my informational testimony, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions, Senator Waters?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are you aware of any states that run driver ed? Any DMVs?
I would defer to Trooper DuPont on that, Senator. I'm offhand, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I have a quick one. I'm just curious, how many complaints have you received about the current program?
That's a great question, Senator. I would say in my 2 years, I mean, I think a lot of the complaints on backlog probably go through Trooper DuPont because he's the face of driver's ed on behalf of the DMV. So he probably can speak more to that than I can. Every now and then I do hear about a backlog issue or a cost issue. I mean, the letter that I got from the young man almost 2 years ago from Goffstown started the scholarship fund. So I hear about it periodically. I wouldn't say it's a regular occurrence for me, but I think I'm not the front and center person for the program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. I think
Thank
we're
you.
all set. And I will now call Dan Goodman. Hi, Dan. Nice to see you.
Very nice to see you. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. For the record, my name is Dan Goodman. My apologies. For the record, my name is Dan Goodman. I'm a public affairs manager for AAA Northern New England, and we advocate for policies that make New Hampshire a safer place to live. And we are here in opposition to this bill as it's written. There are certain parts that we support. I've been in front of this committee quite a few times in support of online driver education. So that portion we do support. In 2000, as the director mentioned, in 2019, the governor signed into law up to 15 hours can be taught online, but it's still not approved. So we think if the state had online driver education, that'd be beneficial to students and residents of New Hampshire. It'd be a safer roads. But the large portion, one of the most important parts of driver education is that in-car portion, as Scott, Mike, and the director mentioned, 16 hours. These instructors, these professional instructors who go through a extremely vigorous training to become driver ed instructors, that is such an important part. And we just don't support taking that away from the instructors and giving that to the state. As the director just talked about, we meet monthly, and I applaud Senator Lang. We share the same concerns he does about driver education: cost, accessibility, number of schools, number of instructors, instructor training, and we meet on a monthly basis, thinking of those things. That's what we go to these meetings thinking about. And we have made a lot of progress behind the scenes, working in rulemaking, working on improving instructor, talk about decreasing the cost or helping students who can't afford it. So we are working behind the scenes to alleviate a lot of these concerns. And we're making a ton of progress. But as this bill's written, we oppose that. The gentleman in front of me did a fantastic job. So I have a very short testimony. Be happy to answer any questions.
Members of the committee have any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
So, is there anyone else, members of the public, that would like to speak to Senate Bill 427? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 427. Thank you. Let's see, where are we? Oh. Can I just sit up here to speak to it? I'm not going to do anything with it. Or do you want me to go over there?
Well, it is a hearing, so you could open the
Okay.
hearing, ask if anybody wants to speak.
Okay, and then I'll, okay. All right.
Yeah, the person here, I'm gonna give it.
Okay.
I suggested to him the bill wasn't going to go. Yeah, so.
Oh,
Just Neil, right?
yeah, is this for, oh, yeah, okay, well, all right,
Neil's back. So
All
why
right.
don't you open it up and-
all right. Okay, we're gonna open the hearing up on Senate Bill 428. I have, Neil Kirk. Am I saying it right?
The one and only.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good afternoon to you and to members of the committee. For the record, I'm Neil Kirk. I live in Ware, and I'm representing myself. Thank you. I'm opposed to this bill. This bill makes 3 changes in the current law. The first change on page 1, lines 8 through 9, is acceptable. It simply expands and makes clear what the law is covering. The second change is on lines 25 through 27 and 30 through 2 on page 2. The current law requires that in order for a stop to be made by a license plate reader, the officer has to do a great deal of background work. This eliminates that and basically says if there's a match between the plate and his computer, he is authorized to make a stop. When we're interfering with the private lives of citizens, I tend to think it's better practice to make sure we're doing it correctly, and therefore I would think that the current law, which requires a greater amount of checking before the stop is made, is the better way to go. But a reasonable case can be made for the change that's here. I wouldn't do it, but it's not unreasonable. The third and final change that I wish to talk about is one that I find unacceptable. It occurs on page 2, line 4, where it changes the current system, which says if a officer is using the license plate reader and doesn't get a hit, that record has to be purged from the system within 3 minutes. If he does get a hit, it can be kept. The bill proposes to change that 3 minutes to 180 days. There are two problems with this. First, let's see what's going to happen. Most of us are drivers in this state. I don't know, we have 500, 700, 800,000 licensed drivers. In the course of 6 months, 180 days, just about everybody in the state of New Hampshire, assuming the state troopers and all of their cars have this, is going to be recorded in some file somewhere, and multiple files. So, for example, if I visit a doctor, participate in a protest, go to Demoulas to shop versus Hannaford, visiting my grandmother, happen to be around at a bank robbery, my car is parked in that area, all of this information about me, absolutely innocent, and all of the 500 to 700,000 people, absolutely innocent, all of this information is going to be recorded in the police database. And the reason for this, from a police point of view, is to some extent sensible. Hey, if we know everybody who was in the vicinity, all the cars, who were in the vicinity of that bank when it was robbed, we really have a leg up on investigating and solving that crime. There's no question that would be very valuable. But look at the impact on privacy. Do you, or do you think your constituents want to know what doctor has been visited, under what circumstances, what political rallies their constituents have attended or not attended? The information about where we are, where our cars are, really defines our lives, and it's none of the state's business to have this. Because this was such an important factor in the original law, which I was involved helping to draft, may I pass out a document?
You can.
Thank you. I worked with the Chiefs of Police Association in 2016, and we came upon an agreement that this provision, the 3-minute rule, would not be changed for 10 years. And to quote the letter, the New Hampshire Association of Police Chiefs agrees not to request, through the legislative process, an extension of the 3-minute limit, nor support directly or indirectly such an effort by anyone else for the next 10 years. Should a third party bring forth a modification of the 3-minute limit, it is the association understands that this letter will be used in opposition to such modification. I signed the letter, the president of the Chiefs signed the letter, and the past president signed this letter. It was part of the negotiation that went into the bill that became the law that you have before you. But more important than this letter or the Chiefs' agreement is the fact that this is blatantly unconstitutional. In 2018, the state passed the Privacy Amendment, Article 2B, by an 81% vote. And that says basically that personal information is not the state's business. And this is a clear example of the state acquiring personal information beyond its need to have it. This is not essential. Good police work can solve these crimes in the way it has for many years. As with all technological changes, there are good things and bad things. In the case of license plate readers, I think the state has set up a system where the benefits of license plate readers are available to the police and the disadvantages are not. This bill changes that. I think it's unconstitutional. In any event, it goes against the agreement that we had, and I hope this committee will either delete that section of the bill or kill the bill in its entirety. Thank you, Madam Chairman, for this opportunity to chat with you, and if you have questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
More of some statements to, I want to clarify a few things. So, thank you for your testimony. The letter that you provided, it that the chiefs, no, the chiefs did not approach for this piece of legislation. They didn't violate that letter. This was brought to me by a constituent in Bedford, where I live, from a former representative who tried to work on this legislation when he was in the House. He came forward to me and asked me to put this bill in. I followed up with my retired former police chief, and he agreed that this bill was important because we had two husband and wife with dementia. They ended up in New York, and if it wasn't for this L-chip reader, they wouldn't have been able to get them home. It's very efficient in Amber Alerts and Silver Alerts. So I want to make that distinction, but I already decided prior to your testimony that because my constituents who asked me to put the bill in have been unable to testify, and because I spoke to Commissioner Edwards and the cost is $6 million, that I was going to interim study it because I wanted to be nice to myself when I kill my bill. So when we go into executive session, that is the plan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate that. And let me say, I had no inclination, even a belief, that the police chiefs would have been involved in this in any way. I just wanted you to know that there was a 10-year window where everyone agreed we wouldn't make changes.
That letter was brought to my attention well after I did the whole bill. And as you know, this is how things go.
Understood.
Any questions from
Yeah.
the committee?
And I just wanted to clarify your testimony.
Thank you.
That if you're going to rob a bank, don't go to the doctor, don't go to protest, don't see your grandmother, and don't go to the mullahs. Is that some of your testimony?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we're good.
Okay, are there any members of the public that would like to speak to Senate Bill 428?
Good to see you.
And you, all of you.
Seeing none, we're going to close the hearing on Senate Bill 428. In exec mind.
Move exec.
A second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
So would you like first on 428, Madam Chair?
yes.
I will move ITL.
How about interim study?
Excuse me, how about interim study?
I second that motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Move consent?
Consent.
All those
Second.
in favor of consent?
Aye.
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 I'll second.
Okay.
You've moved, I second.
That's right. Okay,
So how about, you want to do the salt bill?
sure.
Okay, so I'd like to move Senate Bill 511 ought to pass. And
I'll second that.
I'd like, do we have the amendment? I don't remember the number, but
I have it right here. It's oh my God, I can't see it. even with my glasses.
Madam Chair, Senator Ward has a question.
Oh, I'll take it out.
428.
Thanks, since it's
so
mine.
this is on Senate Bill 511. And we
Oh,
have
yeah.
an
Oh, no.
amendment.
Oh, no, this isn't it. This
That's
is the other
okay.
one.
We'll
Yeah.
do that. We'll get to it.
Can't see.
Um,
I wasn't-
So I'll move, amendment 284S.
A second.
Oh, I want to thank, the folks at DOT, for working on this. And essentially what they have said is that while in a very different manner than what we got from Merrimack and the original bill from Senator Chandler. Thanks for the reminder, Sophie. Basically, this is DOT's agreement to do a salt reduction program upon written request from the town. And they will consult with the town officials about the low salt area needed for the water protection. They will, to the maximum extent possible, do the pre-treating with liquid and other de-icing products for winter weather event to reduce hazards while minimizing the use of granular salt and chlorides. I've had some, Senator Chandler says this looks like a good solution. I've had some conversation with a representative who supported the bill from the area. And I do know the town is, they're anxious because they're really worried about it actually getting done. And that's why they came in with that full bore bill with all those requirements and so on, but I think this will work. So that's why you see what you see. And there it is.
Senator Waters, it's more like a memorandum of understanding. They came to this agreement. Is that correct?
Well, we didn't, it does not mention MOU, but it says that if you have, they get a written request and then they'll consult on the program
Okay.
with, and I think that's actually more efficient.
Okay,
That's why it ended up this way.
all right. I just wanted to have clarification. Okay,
So we can vote on the amendment.
okay. I make a motion to.
We've motioned already.
Oh, all right. So let's, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. I will move 511 ought to pass as amended.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye. I'll move consent.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And you want to take it out?
I'll be glad to take it out.
Okay.
Being a salty kind of guy. And Madam Chair, I didn't know whether we were ready on 4:30. Do we have that amendment, Sophie? If you want to do 4:30, we have an amendment.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so I'll move Senate Bill 4:30.
Second?
And do we, I'll move on to pass, yes. I'm just gonna move it. I don't know where.
Well, then we have the, so, all those in favor?
We gotta do let me introduce the amendment. So, Madam Chair, I'll introduce 228S and I will explain what I did.
Thank you.
If somebody wants a second.
Second.
All right. So I had noted in the hearing, I thought there was a definitional shift or a wording shift that we needed on line 4. That the original language of the bill made it look like this council was going to study every single lithium-ion battery from flashlights to vaping to cars. And that was not the intent. It was the ones related to e-mobility devices and electric vehicles, the big batteries. So you'll see that wording change, electric vehicles, e-mobility devices, and the associated lithium-ion batteries. Okay? So that grammatically focuses the way it ought to be. And then I talked with Senator Birdsell about the issue about the House provision about having to have a majority of legislators, and you and I spoke, Madam Chair. And I don't know what the House would do if we had the notwithstanding. They've been pretty hard about this. I mean, they established this principle. So I thought if we made it a council, then we don't have to have any legislators on it. Legislators can talk with them all they want. And by the way, we get our bite of the apple because when they come up with something, we're the folks who then have hearings or write bills or whatever. So that's basically what it does. It takes it does that. Sophie, I thought that I had suggested a chair, or they're going to elect their own. Oh, called by the state marshal and
Fire marshal.
the state fire marshal. Oh, he shall serve as chair. I'm sorry, I just didn't see it here. Down under E, the fire marshal or designee who shall serve as chair. So we got that. It's in here. So that's it. And I think it's a good idea to do this, and I think this version of it will work.
Good job. Okay, so,
If you want to move, we've moved if you want to ask for a vote on the amendment.
okay, let's, all those in favor on the amendment, please say aye.
Aye. I'll move ought to pass on 4:30 as amended.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Move consent.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
You want to take that one out too?
I could, but if you'd like to, or somebody else, I don't like.
Anybody else
I'll
want to take?
I'll take it out.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. Um. Oh, by the way, a couple of, just to discuss, it seemed to me, Madam Chair, that because we have your sound barrier bill, that is being worked on, that it just might make sense to retain, or interim study, whatever we call it, 466. Because if we're gonna handle the sound barrier issue through the vehicle of your bill, we don't need Chandler's bill.
No, but I didn't speak to Senator Chanley about it. Did you?
I'm not sure.
I would really like to give the courtesy
I
first.
think
if
I,
that's,
I
if
think
you
I,
did,
I think I talked to her about it.
okay, as long as she,
Yeah,
we,
let's do a motion on it, and if she has some objection, we can just change it on the floor.
all right.
But I think, I'm trying to think, I didn't talk to her about the 10-year highway plan one, but I did, yes, I did this in the salt, and she was fine with it.
Okay, I just
So,
want to be
Yeah,
sure.
I did, and thanks for the reminder.
You know how I roll.
So I'll move 466, what do we say, interim study?
Yes,
Okay, interim study.
I'll second that. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Move consent.
Second.
All those in favor for consent?
Aye.
Aye.
I think you should bring, you're the sound barrier person.
All
I
right,
think you
I'll
should
take it out.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not ready to do 431.
No.
Um,
Where are we at on 510?
Good to go.
So what do you want to do?
OTP.
I'll second.
all those in favor of ought to pass on 510, please say aye.
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 Move consent.
Second. All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye.
And I guess we know
I
we'll
will
take it
take it
out.
out.
Senator Fenton will take it out. Okay. All right.
So where are we at on 512?
I think we need to wait on that
Yeah,
one.
okay,
I
let's
think
wait.
so.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
I
yeah.
have to refresh and reread
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and have a
I just
conversation.
I hadn't talked to her about it.
Yeah, I think let's hold off if you don't mind.
Mhm.
And I don't think we're ready for 431 or 427
Okay.
today. Do you?
Nope. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know if we want to talk about it, but what I'd like to do on 431, I mean, you kind of heard me at the end of the hearing on it. I'm a co-sponsor of it, but look at what we heard from people, the anxiety about it, about the 200 feet being sufficient. So I'd like to give them, all the folks involved, a week or so to think about if there's a way of coming up with something. It's just not going to mean we're going to continue to have a brawl. And I talked to Jody this morning. I know you
I
talked to her a little
did
bit.
too.
And I said, and she wants to keep working on it, I believe, and that, I don't think there's any magic numbers here. I'm not sure the right things are being studied in the first place, as you heard. And I think that there might be a way for them to go along the lines I was suggesting that might maybe mean that people can feel better. But
Let's
it's up
just,
to the industry has to tell us if they can live with what we might be thinking about.
we'll just put a pause on this
Yeah,
for now.
I
And
think that's all.
we're in really good shape.
Yeah.
I feel, I think we have a sense of the direction on 427, but,
Well, you can talk. I thought in talking with Senator Lang that if he thinks that based on some of the things that the director said, that it'd be worth having a study about parts of this, that may be the way Senator Lang likes to go, or maybe he'd think about whether we should interim study. I think we heard, I don't know if I want the state to competing with private market, and And that, I just think it's so up in the air about
And
the
it's cost prohibitive,
the
and it's a
cost.
non-budget year.
I don't know, but you know, I mean, I've been here other times when Senator Lang has brought versions of this forward, and you know, we really worked hard to get that compromise on the online. And I'm sorry to hear that hasn't really done as well as we thought it would at the time, but that was a hard won compromise back then. And now here we are, so I don't know.
Well,
But we can talk.
I want to, before we like make our decision, I always
No,
like
let's
to give the
talk, yeah.
courtesy of letting him
Yes,
know
I just- it
what
just
that decision
beats
is
me
going to
and
be.
See what he thinks about.
Yeah.
Right,
So,
yeah.
and so this is where we're at right now. We have just these two, three, I should say, that to exec. And, right, well, I guess if anybody has anything else to say, we'll have a motion to come out of executive session.
So move.
Second. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn? So. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks, everybody. It was a long one.
Denise, do you want to meet next week?
Yeah. Oh, you mean in here to do, or do you want to give some
Do you
time?
want to, do you
for
want to
these?
exec next week? Do you want to have the committee meet next week?
Should we or should we not till we get more?
Well, I mean, the reason I'm asking is that could we,